All right, everybody. I'm Logan Allec. I'm a CPA. And you might be asking yourself, who is the distinguished gentleman below me? Well, that is Sherrod Brown, who is the senior Democratic senator from Ohio. And he had a lot to say to Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin today. So Mnuchin and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, they gave virtual testimony today to various senators concerning the CARES Act. There was much fun to be had by all. All right, I'm going to dig a little more into it later. But in this video, I just want to talk about and show you the Sherrod Brown, Steven Mnuchin interaction because it's, well, you tell me what you think of it. All right. Now, just keep in mind that this interaction, it's over Zoom. Okay. And, the senator's Zoom quality, it's not the best, the audio and video quality. So I apologize for that. But hopefully you're able to make out what's being said. And I'll also give you the gist of it in between clips. All right. So let's get into this right here.
Of our country. Secretary Mnuchin, you said there's considerable risk of not reopening, that keeping some businesses closed could cause permanent economic damage. How many workers will die if we send people back to work without the protections they need?
So the senator asked Secretary Mnuchin, how many workers will die if we send people back to work without something just dropped in our house, without the protections we need? Now, I think this question is a little silly, but it does speak to the point that the sooner the country reopens, the more cases there will be in the short term. And yes, deaths will increase in the short term. That's the reality of it. But obviously, this question is asked in a way that's extremely confrontational. And here's how Mnuchin responds.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Senator, we don't intend to send anybody back to work without the protections. And I would say I was prepared to come there today. I thought it was safe to testify. Matter of fact, I already was at the Senate this morning wearing a mask. And I assure you, both myself and everybody on the task force, the vice president and others, are following the best medical advice. And I couldn't be more proud of the medical advice that we're getting and the way the economy is opening up in a safe way.
So that Mnuchin shoots back. He basically gives a political answer, right? We don't intend to send anybody back to work without precautions. We're taking medical advice, yada, yada, yada. But the issue with Mnuchin's answer here is that Trump has basically left the reopening up to the governors. He has said so himself. And we know that many governors are reopening in such a way that's actually not in line with the guidelines that the White House itself has put forward. Let's go back to Sherrod Brown.
So how many workers should give their lives to increase our GDP by 0.5%? That you're pushing people back into the workplace. There's been no national program to provide worker safety. The president says reopen slaughterhouses. Nothing about slowing the line down. Nothing about getting protective equipment. Is how many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points?
How many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points? Obviously taking a shot at Trump here, who loves to praise the stock market and how well it's doing as an indicator of economic prosperity under his presidency, at least before the corona, right, under his watch. And I think what Brown is saying here is basically, hey, you Republicans who think the stock market is such an indicator of prosperity and greatness, how many Americans do you think is an appropriate number to boost that stock market, which obviously in his view is not a true indicator of economic prosperity if Americans have to die to increase it? Here's what Mnuchin said.
No workers should give their lives to do that, Mr. Senator, and I think your characterization is unfair. We have provided enormous amounts of equipment. We've worked with the governors. We've done a terrific job of getting...
Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to let you make a political speech about what a great job. We hear that from the president in his news conferences.
All right, so I think that's enough of that. I mean, Brown is obviously Brown ate his Wheaties this morning. I mean, I think he has whatever meat Kevin takes. Anyway, all right, I think that's enough of that. Look, Brown is making a point, and it's a valid point, right? That yes, if we rush into reopening, it could have very negative public health ramifications. Mnuchin is saying, look, we're doing the best we can. And personally, I think this bickering back and forth, it's a little childish. Everybody has to accept that the country has to reopen sooner rather than later. Otherwise, the long-term effects of a nationwide shutdown, or a shutdown of most states, could do irreparable and will do irreparable damage to our country. On the other hand, we also have to accept the fact that as we reopen, cases will accelerate more than they would have otherwise. Death counts will increase. That is just part of it. It's a war. Unfortunately, this is a war involving civilian lives who didn't sign up for this at all, who it's not their fault, but this is the reality. And look, some people will emphasize more the economic aspect of reopening, right? Saying we need to save our economy. We need to get our economy back open again. Obviously, Trump is in this mindset as well with the election 6 months away. Others, of course, will emphasize more the public health aspect and loss of life aspect, right? And there's political reasons for both of these perspectives. Don't let any of these politicians fool you, okay? For the most part, they're in this for themselves, I think, for the most part. All right. Anyway, there's no perfect answer to this. It's about balancing that risk, right? And frankly, I think the way that some of these politicians talk about it, like Sherrod Brown here, I just don't think it's helpful to the national conversation. I mean, he asked Mnuchin, how many workers will die if they go back to work without the protections we need? And then he asked, how many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points? In my opinion, those are not fair questions. They don't have a right answer. You can't answer those questions. I mean, okay, how many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points to get the economy going again? Obviously, zero. But you can't extract from that, well, then, we shouldn't reopen the country and save the economy until we're sure that no more lives will be lost as a result. If we do that, we'll be shut up in our homes for a very long time, and we will do irreparable harm to the country as a result. Look, I'm not one of those who think we need to go back to business as usual tomorrow as though there isn't an airborne pandemic virus going around. No, there must be precautions taken, obviously, especially with those who are more susceptible to being harmed by COVID-19. But I am also of the opinion that asking questions like how many workers should give their lives to increase the GDP or the GDP or the Dow Jones by 1,000 points is not helpful. So what do you think? Do you think the senators' questions were fair? Do you think they were helpful? Or do you think they were just, kind of silly politics as usual? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to dig more into other senators grilling Mnuchin. I also have a link down there if you're looking to compare personal loan quotes right now for extra cash. Anyway, go ahead and check that out. Bye-bye.